Gina_Indonesia. And second, to always turn on your camera and mute the microphone. Third is if you have any question, you may type it on the Zoom chat about your question or stated that you want to ask directly to the speaker. Fourth, to actively participate in the event because we will have the Best Participants Awards. And last but not least, to stay until the very end of the event, as well as filling the feedback form in order to obtain the e-certificate. Now, the next session of the event is one of the most awaited session, which is the seminar. For this first speaker, we have Ms. Susantai to share about how to be a leader and overcoming problems in the workplace. Ms. Susantai is the founder of OTP Law Corporation back in 1991, a Singapore-based. And she is also an accredited mediator with the Singapore Mediation Center. Without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Tai to present. Ms. Tai, the time and place is yours.
Thank you so much, Gina, for the introduction, and a really good afternoon to everyone here, my fellow speakers, facilitators, law students from ASEAN. I see that many of you are coming from Indonesia, but I also see some of you coming from Thailand, Philippines, Sri Lanka even. Such a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you for turning on your video, because as a speaker, it's always nice to be able to see the participants. Well, I'm here to speak on leadership. To be honest, except for the fact that I started my own practice and run my own law firm 2 years after I got my practicing cert, I am hardly an authority on leadership. Guess how many somersaults I flipped when I was told to present on the different theories on leaderships and how I apply the principles of the laws of leadership. Sorry, I'm afraid you will have to Google all that if you want to understand these theories, because I don't. But let me tell you what I hope you will gain from my presentation. I want to share with you my own thoughts on leadership, in particular the types that were running my small law firm, the traits that I seem to come back to again and again to help me see through what is a roller coaster ride for the past 30 years. Yes, that's how long I've been running my firm. And sometimes I do feel like I'm still roller coasting. I will share some insights into starting your own firm, your own law firm, and why professional services business like a law business can be a highly complex but mom and pop setup. Then there is the kind of leadership which I think might be required for the next 5 to 10 years. Personally, what we look for in our future leaders and how we train. Now, I want to have a quick pro quo with you for being here and sharing my thoughts. I would also like in return for you to share so that I can gain some insights from you as the next generation on your own expectation, okay, of the firm that you will join, the kind of leadership that will make you stay on with the firm, and the growth path that you want to see for yourself. Do you eventually want to run a law firm? Do you want to set up on your own? Why not? Okay, so I really hope you can do this for me. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to meet so many of you and to hear from so many of you. And we can do this in 2 ways. One at a Q&A, and then at the end, when I flash my last slide, it has a QR code. Please scan it. And there are a series of questions, very short questions. And if you can, submit your written reply. And so now I will start, okay? And let me start with a short background of my own journey as the boss of my own law firm. When I was 12, I told my mom that by the time I hit 28 years old, I want to run my own business. That was after I told her when I was 6 that when I enter university, I will leave home. She's not too pleased with that, but to this day, I have to say, and I will never forget, that my mother was the true supporter of me when I decided to venture out on my own. Now, at 26 years old, 2 years after practice, and 2 years earlier than the 28. That was in 1991. If you were born in that year, you will be 30 by now, and this is as good a time as any to start something on your own. But I have to say this, okay? There is never a bad time to start something on your own. Okay, so you can start anytime. And if you look at my profile, at 50 years old, I started a new business. But I'll come to that later. Anyway, 1991, I turned 26, and then suddenly I was impatient. I asked myself, why wait another 2 years? Just do it already. I barged into my boss's room. Um, he was my very first boss, and also my pupil master. I told him, hey, I'm ready to be a partner. He said many things, but today all I can remember was, no, you're not ready. So I tendered my resignation. After that, I spent quite a lot of time speaking with people about setting up my own law firm. You know, I talked to parents, I talked to friends, and then they start introducing me to lawyers, other lawyers who started on their own. And that was how I met my first partner. He was a sole proprietor. He's already started practicing on his own for 1 year. And he's even braver than me because right after pupillage, I don't know whether it is still called pupillage now in your country. It's now called training contract in mine. Right after pupillage, he's never worked for anybody. He started his own firm. So we started Ongte and Partners, me with practically a stranger. That partnership lasted for almost 20 years. Till today, we still collaborate a lot, despite him branching out away from the firm. Because both our law firms are part of an advisory called Practice Forte Advisory. More about that later. I just want to say that I have slides actually, but I prefer not to speak with slides because I like to see you and I like for you to see my face. But at the end of the seminar, if you want these slides, they can be sent to you. I will also be publishing a script of what I say today, so this information will be available if you want them. This part, I want to talk about leadership. Okay, my own thoughts about leadership. As I was preparing for this training, I asked myself, what is leadership, right? Does a leader need to lead anyone? Can you be a leader of none? Or does it count only if you are a leader of many? In this age of influencers and followers, is the influencer a great leader if he or she has 1 million followers? Well, I'm sure there will be differing views on this one. But back in 1991, when I first started, for a few months, I was really a leader of none. And thereafter, for many years, I was a leader of one, me and my secretary. My partner was my equal, not someone I led, and definitely not his precious secretary. But let me tell you, this secretary of his is now working with me and has been doing so for the past 20 or 30 years. Now, did I really regard myself as a leader? Hell yes. In fact, when I was 2 and my second sister was born, I already knew that I was to lead. I'm the eldest in the family, by the way. I think the question of how many you need to lead is not as important as understanding the kind of leader that you are. I will come back to you later about why the leadership of small is particularly relevant in the context of a law firm. But now I want to discuss the different types of leaderships, especially those that you deal with in a small law firm. I did find that very early on, the magic number in the board of leaders is 3. Why? So that there will always be a majority vote and there is no sitting on the fence allowed. So things will move, there will always be a decision. I think it was only for a very short period of time, maybe a year, 2, at maximum 3, when OTP had 2 partners or 2 directors. We were 3 for most of the 30 years. And in those 30 years of running the firm, I was partner or co-director with maybe 3 others. As you can see, the team of leaders lasted a very long time. These personalities went through all sorts of extraordinary thick and thin. We, however, overcome them, remain first very, very firm friends and great partners. even the one who left. These are the people I can count on to help me out in any situations relating to practice. And as the saying goes, they have my back. And I don't ever take this for granted. Anyway, what are our types? So let me pigeonhole for ease of reference. Three of us currently at OTP Law Corp, we are the following three types. We have the visionary, we have the executioner, and then we have the encyclopedia. This is a beautiful combo for us. So we have a visionary who can see into the future, detect trends, spot weaknesses. She's wise and crazy. She's imaginative yet careful. And she calls herself the director of coffee. Now, nobody else I know in the law firm, in the Singapore law firm, has a director of coffee as a managing director. And then we have the encyclopedia who knows it all. He is also the most senior of us. Actually, he comes from the same cohort as our director of coffee. So he is very clever. He does not suffer fools, was an ASEAN scholar. He is stern yet soft, and everybody's go-to when they need to find an answer. Now, this is especially important for a law firm as it is an essential quality of a highly skilled and effective lawyer. And then we have me, the doer and the executioner. I can't stand inaction. I can't stand indecisiveness. I don't sit on the fence unless maybe I'm not so interested. I definitely tolerate failures. And my personal belief is always better to do and fail than to never do at all. So I am also impatient, aggressive, a bit of a go-getter, but I'm mellowing with age. Qualities of a leader. Can everybody do me a favor? Just for a split second, just write down in the chat what you think is an important quality of a leader. Just a quick one so that I can have a look at what you think are important qualities. Can you do that? Just quickly. Anybody? Please keep it coming. I'm very, very interested. I will take a picture as well. Very good. Yeah. Excellent. As you can see from the responses, thank you everyone. I am expecting 75 response since there are 75 of you here now. You will see that a great leader should possess many, many great traits. And I agree with all of you. And as I'm looking at the chat, because I have a few screens here, that's why I'm not really looking at the camera. I want to say I agree with all of you that these are important qualities. And I want to tell you, for most leaders, they will have quite a few of these qualities, but these traits surfaces at various points. Okay, for example, when you need to create, then there are important traits like imaginative, curious, being able to communicate, courage for change. And then maybe when you want to manage a team, you will again need to be an effective communicator. Somebody say compassionate. I totally agree. Empathetic, firm, but fair, right? Then there are the toughest times of all right? Situations where you need to overcome failures, doubts, naysayers. And despite all the great partners, you will feel sometimes utterly alone. For me, these are the traits I come back to again and again to help me overcome some of the darkest time. Okay? They are confidence and self-belief, because there will be a lot of people telling you, it won't work, it will sure fail, and this and that. Okay? There is decisiveness. Once you believe in yourself, you make a decision, stick with it, stay focused. Perseverance. Okay, this is a very important quality because sometimes it is all about hunkering down and going at it, working. Very, very important for me. is optimism. Always believe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. For me, many times, no decision is often the worst decision of all. As a leader, people look to you to guide, move them, convince them. Okay, so don't sit on the fence. At least that's what I think. Perseverance. How did I learn with perseverance? There's always the light at the end of the tunnel. Let me tell you, and because you're here, I will share something that I don't usually share. This is not something that is so glorifying about my firm. When we first started running the firm at 26 years old, we know nuts about financial management. Okay? And for more than 18 years, our bank account was in negative. Mind you, it was not that the firm was not profitable. We were very, but we allowed the clients to owe us, and then we didn't know how to tell them, please pay up. That got us in trouble, of course. But we hunkered down, kept working, and then we hired a good accountant who made us travel all the way to a client's office to collect our payment. If you don't remember anything about financial management today, let me just tell you what he told us that I never forget. Okay? If the fee is $100, you can tell the client, okay, you can post the check to us. If it is $1,000 or four figures, you send someone to go and collect the check. And if it is five figures, then the lawyer go down personally to collect. Okay. Anyway, this is of course something unthinkable for us. Like, oh, I'm a lawyer. How can I go down and collect money like a, money lender? But you know what? It's really a basic for all kinds of businesses, right? And we did that. With that, bank account was never in a negative anymore, despite the fact that it was 18 years. Okay. And today we have more than 6 months reserves worth in the account at any time. So we're very proud. And I was going to tell you that no one person can possess all these qualities, all the important qualities that you listed down. But what a good leader must recognize is that because some of these strengths are quite absent in yourself, then you must find that fit with the others who possess the strengths that you don't have. I think I'm an executioner and a doer, all right? I spend a lot of my time doing things. To be honest, I think I don't think enough. So I don't call myself a visionary. I team up with a visionary and we get very, very far. Okay, because she is who she is, I am who I am, right? I execute her vision. And then we have Mr. Knowledge, Mr. Know-it-all, right? Who's always there to lend a lot of credibility to the firm and to find answers for us. And on top of that, of course, I don't possess some of the qualities I have now. So even as you didn't come packaged a certain way, know that some days you can acquire these qualities. Example for me, patience, empathy. I was a very arrogant young boss, all right? My staff left me. But I think with years of learning, both from the people whom I work with and people who work for us, okay, I have learned it from experience and acquire these qualities from wisdom. And like many young people, I was often unsure when I first started practice. The wonderful thing about wisdom is that eventually you will, and anybody who wants it will acquire it. If you have the humility to always want to learn, the curiosity and courage to always want to try, wisdom will be there for you to acquire. Can I trouble someone to just share screen a bit on the fourth slide? I think it's Nasha, is it?
Yes, Miss Susan. So this is already on the
Okay,
fourth
thank
slide.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, yeah. This is the slide about starting your own firm. I want to actually, if I have time, I know my whole presentation might run over time, but I wanted to leave a big part of this to the Q&A and answer very specific questions. If you are thinking of starting your own firm, because you're here on a leadership presentation, so I'm sure a lot of you are already thinking or are leaders in your own right, then ask me specific questions. But at this segment, I want to just address briefly some of the standard questions people have when they're starting their own firm. Okay, but I want to talk a bit more about it in the Singapore context because this is where I am, so I only know the rules here. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you understand business, and when you start a business, what are the considerations you should want to think about? But many times you start with barriers to entry. Okay, what are barriers to entry? I think there are like bars for that to see whether a business is easy to get in or to start or not. And I can tell you for law, it is very, very hard. For one, you need to be a practicing lawyer in Singapore to own a law firm. In 2015, the laws in Singapore changed a bit to allow a long-term employee to own shares in the firm, but not a majority stake. In fact, not a very big stake. So, as a business, you're not like a hospital. Okay, doctors, they can be run by completely non-doctors. They have money pumped in. They have a listed company manage the whole outfit, not a law firm, at least not in Singapore. So many firms, law firms are not allowed to list. I remember I started my firm after 2 PQE, and of course my partner, my gung-ho partner, then partner, no PQE. Okay, you know what is PQE? It's actually the years in practice, okay? In Singapore, it is not possible now. You need to have been in practice for 3 years, and after that, you need to take an accredited management course. You need minimum indemnity insurance, okay? And you need to fulfill a lot of regulations, even down to, can you share space? By the way, I'm in the co-share space. Can you use this name? Not so easy. All right, you still need an approval, the approval from the authorities. So very, very high entry barrier. It is a nightmare of a business, if you ask me, right? That does not seem to allow for conventional growth with funding from external sources. Okay, and that is just about starting the business. What about when you're already, okay, you decided, I'm going to start. Never mind, I start small, right? One lawyer. But suddenly, right, things that an employee does not have to be concerned with is now your problem. What? Expenses. I mean, you don't have employee, but you still may have space, right? Revenue. How do you get your work? Management of the office. Okay, you say no staff. Then who's answering the phone calls? All the emails, all the queries, all the angry feedback. When can I expect payment? Who's going to do that? Maybe I should come down and collect it. Do you have time to do that? On top of all that, the most important part of your business is management of cases. Drafting, hearings, instructions, opposing counsel, blah, 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 right? Management of clients. They come to you because they are in trouble most of the time. They are not in a good place and therefore they can be difficult, right? Why is my case not moving? You're ineffective. You mean you lost? You are lousy. But I won 10 others. Sorry, your last one is the one that counts, etc., etc. Right? So tough. You have time to sleep? I don't know, man. When I first started my own firm, I was sleeping in the office. Peace? I can tell you, I'm waiting for retirement to seek peace. Okay? So the big question, why? Why in the world for? Why do we want to start our own law firm? Alas, I can only speak for myself. I did it because when I was 12 years old, I told my mother I would. If you ask me, have you thought about quitting? Maybe never for the first 18 years. Then maybe only once a week in the last 5 years. And now, maybe twice a day. I forgot to mention that I wanted to retire at 55. So guess how old I am now this year. But this is the truth. There was never a day I would look back and regret starting my own practice. Never a day when I thought I would rather work for someone else. Despite all the blood, sweat, tears, heartaches, maybe high blood pressure a little bit, okay? Why? Because the experience is priceless, right? Fulfilling that dream, I think it's worth a lot of all the sacrifices. What is my reward? The independence, the wisdom, definitely I gained so much from the experience. The confidence, the lessons, and of course, very importantly, the relationships. With clients, with partners, so many I met in the course of practice. So if you ask me, is starting your own firm for everyone? Maybe not, okay? But should you start if you really want to? Hell yes. And if you look at the slides, right, I mean, why do I have a little blurb there about having a strong core, a strong moral compass or center for a law firm boss? Ours is a business based on the natural trust people immediately confer to a lawyer. Perhaps that's why, the horror stories. I don't know whether in your country it happens. In my country, it seems to happen a lot of lawyers running away with clients' monies, and the news are often sensational. Why? Because people are supposed to trust us. They don't ask why when you say, hey, pay this money into my trust account. See, even the name of the account is called trust, and we will safeguard it for you. They don't ask why. So if you don't have a strong moral center, there will be many, many, many opportunities for you to stray. I don't know. Hang on. Can you stop sharing the screen now? Thank you, Nasha. Okay. The next segment I want to just briefly touch on is to talk about law firm as a complex business model. Okay. It is a complex business model because of, like I said, the high barriers, and then all the legislation, all the restrictions imposed. Okay, half my frustrations, to be honest, is in the running of my firm, all these restrictions, right? Cannot have other people own this, you cannot do that, you cannot market, you cannot advertise, and cannot share fees, stuff like this, okay? Some of these restrictions I find very anachronistic in this day and age. We are therefore a lot less competitive. Look at the accountants and look at the big accounting firms and how they are actually eating into the business of law. They've become so powerful because they don't have so many restrictions. And they can, in Singapore at least, they can easily swallow the biggest law firm and maybe a few more, right? So, advertisements frowned upon, price competition frowned upon, even efficiency is frowned upon, right? What happens? Many law firms are run like mom and pop shops. Don't have vision for the future, except to retire and then you close the firm when you do. And few definitely believe that there is any value in the law business when the rainmaker retires. It's also complicated by your own perception of the business of law. After all, we all regarded it as an honorable profession. I don't want to say it as if I'm demeaning it. I'm saying it because actually I do believe it. That it's a calling, kind of like a priesthood or a monkhood, right? It's not about making money, you tell yourself. It's about service, access to justice. I remember vividly how by the way, I still flinch if someone say, oh, she's a business person, she's not really a lawyer.
Hello, Ms. Sorry to cut you off, but your session
Has overrun.
up, yeah.
Okay. Then it's okay. I actually am only halfway through, but I think I can imagine that you will want to move on. Can I just conclude?
Yes, sure.
Okay. I will just conclude. Um, I want to talk about, just as a conclusion and very quickly, about leaders of the future and then what we look for and how we train. Okay. Essentially, they are no different. It's just that it's necessary because renewal is necessary. Training, the only way I feel is most effective is mentoring, and we mentor by sharing and then by guiding. And over this 30 years, at the end of the day, this is what I learned: with the right mentoring and the right attitude, everyone can succeed. But yet, even as you succeed, it doesn't mean that you will not fail again. And as long as your center is strong, moral compass is working in the right direction, then you have the foundation to be a great leader. Okay, everything else you learn on the job. All right. Can I trouble Nisha to just flash the last slide? And
Yes.
can I just please request for everybody to scan it and help me by replying those questions? You don't have to reply all if you don't want. Just reply to some of them. You have my email address there. And if you need any kind of mentoring throughout your journey or just somebody to talk to, you can always email me. I'm open to you. I'm always looking for young uh, lawyers who might have some programs that they want to work with us at Practice Forte. So that's the end of my presentation. Okay, like I said, I didn't manage to cover everything, but I will publish the script and the slides are available online. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Tay, for the very insightful presentation. Next, we will have Mr. Atul Gona to share about how to be a leader and achieve an organization objective. Mr. Atul Gona is Specialist Principal, Industrial Goods and Energy at the Boston Consulting Group. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Gokna to present. Mr. Gokna, the time and place is yours.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. And thank you, Susan, for a very interesting presentation. So I will keep it short and try and bring us back on time. Just maybe if I can share my screen, that'll help me explain some of the things I have for you today. Right. So the topic says, how to, just have a second. How to become a good leader and achieve the objectives of the organization. Basically, both are synonymous. If you are a good leader, you will achieve the objectives of the organization. So effectively, it boils down to how to be a good leader. Before I get into the topic, I just like to show, and since you are all law students and lawyers, I thought it might be more careful and have a more appropriate disclaimer. This talk is being given in my personal capacity, and this is not the official BCG view. And also the thoughts are based on my personal experience. So I will give you a quick background, and also because I'm not a very typical BCG consultant, I have had a very varied career across various organizations in various parts of the world. And I thought and that's why I thought it might be better actually if I give you a perspective more from my own personal experience than an official BCG view. So just a very quick background about myself. I've worked mostly in the heavy industry and mostly in the strategy field, but I have played roles of a strategy consultant, a general manager of a business unit. I've been a regional head of marketing and strategy for Asia Pacific. I've been a director, a board member, and I've been an entrepreneur as well. So I have actually had the good fortune to see a very wide variety of situations and experience leadership in different situations. And as I will explain later, different situations actually often require a different leadership style. And even if you remain a lawyer all your life and you end up working for a law firm, or you go internal and work for a firm, you will find that within that also you will encounter a very wide variety of situations, which may actually call upon you to adjust your leadership style slightly. So I've worked in Indonesia for Sinarmas, which is a local conglomerate. Currently, I work for BCG. This is my second stay at BCG. I was in BCG long back in early 2000s. Then I left to go join industry. Then I'm back in BCG. I work for BlueScope in Australia, Southeast Asia, in the west coast of the United States. I work, BlueScope is, by the way, an Australian company. I worked for Alcoa, which is an American company in America, in Europe, in China. So, I'm originally from India, but I left that long back. I grew my education in India, and I also was a board member at a joint venture with Tata Steel over there. So let me see what I can bring that for you, how I can distill some insights. And I have actually thought about it, and I have 3 insights to offer you today. Attributes of a good leader, and I won't spend much time because I think Susan did an outstanding job of talking about that. And also, in a law firm context. So I won't spend too much time on that. I'll just offer my personal perspective. But more importantly, we'll spend more time on inherent and learned leadership styles, right? And then thirdly, contingency leadership, how you can adapt that to different situations. So what are the attributes of a good leader? I think we already talked about, you covered already, you gave in a lot of answers. There is so much material on good leadership. In fact, I like to joke that there is the advice on being a good leader is plenty, but good leaders are not in plenty, right? So there's plenty of advice. And all of these are good. And in my life, in different parts, I can talk on hours for each one of them as to how they have been really, really important in different situations. But the ones I actually, without repeating the whole session, I would say my personal favorites, right, out of my own life's experience across cultures, across continents, across companies, and across roles has been, I found that these 3 always stood out for me. And I would say, particularly in professional services like consulting, these are even more relevant. First is authenticity. When you are a leader, you may think that you are keeping something to yourself. But actually, what we don't realize is the team can see everything. We are completely naked. When you are in a leadership role, you are completely naked. Even the slightest crease in your eye, on your forehead about some situation, the team can notice and pick it up. So if you're not authentic, if you're not being completely transparent, the team starts to reserve its participation and engagement. So it's very, very important to be completely authentic about not only your the good part, but also the bad part, where you are being nervous, you're scared about something, you are unsure. Be completely authentic, and the team will forgive you for weaknesses, for displaying weakness, but they will not forgive inauthenticity. Second thing is to be cool under stress. So while authentic, and now authentic said, even if you are getting nervous at some point, team will forgive you up to a certain point. But at the end of the day, the one of the most important job of a leader is to remain cool under stress. And if you are a high performing team, and if you are going for the shooting for the stars, you are going for big hairy goals, definitely there will be stress. The whole point of being high performance and trying to strive for something bigger is to bring stress, because if there was not stress, it's not challenging enough, because that means everybody else is doing, their competition is also doing the same thing. So stress is inevitable, and that's when the leader can differentiate himself. The leader needs to remain cool. And the third the quality is inclusiveness. A leader cannot play favorites. You have to be very, very careful about that. It's all our natural inclination to like some people, to prefer somebody who has a very similar style or a very similar cultural background, similar linguistic background, some similar racial background, all kinds of very, very ingrained subconscious biases and preferences drive our behavior. And it has been proven. A good example in Australia, I remember, was they found that the majority of the CEOs of Australian companies are tall, have played rugby, and have monosyllabic names like Mark, Joe, Sam. It's such a strange thing, right? You would think that it's not a criteria that a board looks at to select a CEO. But the fact remains, subtle biases do creep in. And again, as a leader, you have to be very careful to remain inclusive so that nobody feels excluded. Now, you will realize that all these 3 qualities actually don't have to do anything with content. They're not content qualities. You don't have to know law. You don't have to know strategy. You don't have to know aluminum, steel, or whatever you're doing. These are very essential and are humane qualities. And that's what distinguishes a good leader, an outstanding leader, from a normal leader. So these are personally my favorite, and I found them to be really important and applicable. And by the way, I have learned them the hard way, not always, I don't mean them as a theory, because at some points I was not authentic. It means that at some point I was not cool, and some point I was not exclusive. So, you learn and you reflect, and then you adjust your style. Now, let's come to the next topic, which is, what is your inherent and learned leadership style? All of us are born with a certain psychology, or it's nature and nurture. Maybe let's say it's 50% genetics or nature, what you're born with, and 50% is nurture, which psychologists say pretty much your psychology is formed by the time you're 7, right? So you don't have a lot of control after that. So you will have, by the time you join the workforce, you will have an inherent style. You may not be able to change it. You can modify it, you can improve it, but you will always have an inherent style. So the first thing in being a good leader is self-awareness. In fact, sorry, I should have mentioned that as another very important attribute. Self-awareness is very, very important, so that you understand your own limitations. And you don't try to cover, you don't think that, oh, I'm the leader, so I'm supposed to be perfect all the time. I have to know the answer. You don't try too hard, and don't be too hard on yourself. So self-awareness. So then what's our style? So most of you may have seen this. This is very common framework, but I want to start from here and build further on this. So there are clearly 2 kinds of thought patterns. There are people whose personality, and this I've gone through countless personality profile tests through various jobs, and I've been in rooms where the entire room has done a certain secret, confidential profile, and then has discussed it. There's DISC, there is, of course, classic Myers-Briggs. There's so many models. There's, was there appetite for change? All of them lead to something around this. They all vary a little bit. But there are people who are very good at managing, and then there are people who are good at leading, okay? And then there are people who are, in some parts of their life, have been more forced into manager relationships, and some situations, some have been forced into leadership situations, and they have done fine. People have done fine. So this is not very black and white, but let's look at what it is. So managers, when they are trying to explain to their teams, they articulate targets, right? They articulate goals, objectives, targets, KPIs. A leader typically articulates a vision. It's more broad. It's got a bit of imagination built into it. It's got a bit of romance built into it. It's a vision, right? Managers run the business. They're very good at running the business. Leaders are usually thinking about changing the business, right? What do I need to do differently? Managers are concerned with doing things right. Leaders are more concerned with doing the right things, because they know that they will not be able to do everything right. They will not be able to complete everything, and they're trying to prioritize. Managers are trying to organize people, give them the right job and task. Leaders are saying, I'm not going to be too directive. I'm going to try and inspire you, and you go and figure it out yourself. Managers are being very directive and saying, you should do this. Leaders are trying to influence. They are not you coming from a position of power that I'm the boss and you better do this. They are trying to say, hey, and they will use a lot of words like, could you please? Would you mind? Do you think this is a good idea? Right? So that's the influencing style. Managers are trying to control, leaders are trying to motivate, and managers are trying to follow rules. There are existing rules, and they're trying to follow rules. Leaders are trying to write the new rules. They're trying to change the rules. They are almost as often going against the rules. Now, in the world, typically, how does the world, especially when you're young and idealistic, you are going to see this, and here's a guess, and you can tell me whether I'm right or not. What you're going to think is, This is boring and this is sexy, right? Very common. Um, all of us have this intention because the left side seems boring. Uh, the reality is actually not that. The reality, let me tell you the reality. Reality is this world is run by managers, right? The managers make the world go around. In terms of job ratio, if I was to hazard a guess, I would say there are 99 jobs for managers versus one job for the leader. If you are going to take a plane, as I did, I'm based in Jakarta, but right now I'm in Singapore to meet family. But if I was taking a plane, do I want a very leader-like person driving the plane, or do I want a manager-like profile person driving the plane? I want a manager-like person who knows his job, is going to fly the plane, and is not going to dream about how to change the plane or design the next plane while he's flying the plane. Same thing goes for a countless amount of services provided by lawyers, provided by people who make the essential services go around, governments, bureaucrats, doctors, nurses. So the left is very, very important. And I would argue that before you can get to be a leader, you actually need to learn the fundamentals of being a good manager. You may have a natural propensity or a tendency to be on the left side. Like if you are an ESTP, a Myers-Briggs type profile, you might be on the left. If you're an INTJ style, you might be on the right. But at the end of the day, both are good. Both are required to make the world work, and both have very broad and successful career options for most people. If I may qualify a little bit, again, what's the difference in these styles, right? So managers deal a lot more in the world of science. And I'm not coming at this from a theoretical point of view, because this framework, and it's often discussed in so many schools and, but I'm going to give you a little more of my personal flavor on what I have experienced these two sides to be. So the left side has got a lot to do with science or law or how things are. The right side has to do with a bit of an art, right? Left has to do with intellect, applying intellect, analysis, data analysis, and solving problems. The right side has a lot more to do with wisdom, which Susan talked about. Has a lot to do more with about reflection. What it's got to do with self-awareness, reflecting, instead of just analysis. It has got to do with a deep internal self-reflection on what's going on and what is missing, what is the missing ingredient, how can we provide that. Left side has to do with practice. The right side has to do with experience, which is practice plus learnings. Once you actually draw a lot of deeper learnings, you build experience, and it leads to wisdom. And again, you may have a natural propensity for one or the other styles. You may, in different situations, play a manager role. You may, different situations, play a leader role. So this is not that you are either a manager type person or you are leader type. We all float in and out of these paradigms constantly. Then the next section is, okay, then in that case, what's the value of this, right? The value of this is that you need to understand what is the situation that you are going to apply this in. So there is, this is where I will actually borrow from a gentleman's work called Fiedler, right? Fiedler's contingency leadership model. And I found it quite useful. It's got its fringes where it breaks down, but for the most part, it's a fairly reasonable framework, at least in early part of your leadership study, in case you're studying it properly. So we've talked about the left side, which is about your leadership style, right? We talked about that. Now, in what are the different situations in which this leadership styles may be applied? And what affects these leadership situations. So one is position power, right? How much of a power do you have? Do you have a direct, are you a direct boss? And even if you're a direct, or are you in an advisor capacity? For instance, when I was a general manager, I was the direct boss of a team. When I was a regional head of marketing, if I go into a country, I cannot force them to do the way I want it. I have to sell the idea to them. So position power is weak. That changes your style, right? How you lead. Uh, Clearly, if I have power, I can be directive. If I don't have power and I'm in a consultative role, I will have to use more persuasive, influencing approach. Same thing, if you are a partner in a law firm and you're leading your own team, you can be very directive because everybody knows that if the partner doesn't like you, you're gone. Whereas if you are an internal lawyer in a firm and you are advising the CEO or the business unit heads or the head of marketing, you don't have any position power. So you are going to use a more consultative style. Second is task structure, right? If the task is very well defined, you can assume a certain style. You can be directive, you can be very science oriented, analytic oriented. But there are many roles in life in many companies that there is very high ambiguity. And strategy consulting is actually a classic example. It's a very high ambiguity uh, um, role. So I am being prompted. I have 1 minute left, but I will take 2-3 more minutes and then conclude. So that's the task structure for ambiguity. And you can see that both can actually, how they can influence. The third is the leader-member relationship, right? So if I have a team that I've been working very closely, they understand me, I understand them, then I can be very directive. Just like a parent is to a child. They can say, hey, you do this. And the child will do it begrudgingly, but won't mind. But you try to do that you've just met and somebody from another culture, you met them at airport and you say, you do this, and they'll say, to hell with you, right? So again, the level of relationship you have allows you to exercise different kinds of style. So there is, these kind of situation, and I'll cut straight to, this is a broad model which says that when you have high control situations or very low control situations, you can be a task-oriented leader. You can be very detail specific, but when you have moderate control and you have to use a more influencing style, and there are different permutations of these. So like, you can see on the three factors are on the left side, and you can see the interplay, the permutations, and you find yourself in these situations. You have to take a more relationship oriented style. And again, leadership and relationship oriented, task oriented doesn't exactly map to manager and leader, but in some ways it does. So you have to navigate and pick and choose. It's when you are in my life and all throughout my career, when I've been in different situations, it's not that I actually started a job and I looked at this model and I said, oh, this is the situation, I analyze, and this is the style I'm going to apply. Most of the time we go about life in an intuitive manner, right? We just respond to the situation as it occurs. But in hindsight, if I look back and if I look back and I say, would it have been better actually if I had used these models and consciously taken a decision, firstly, to become aware of my inherent style, to understand the weaknesses of my style, and would it have made sense for me to understand different situations that I'm in and adapt my style, even if it means adaptation means 90% I'm going to be who I am, but to 10% I could have modified it, would have made a very big difference. And I heartily recommend to you that in your careers, as you go forward, try to spend a little bit of time every time you join a new job, new role, new location. Try to do a step back, do a bit of reflection, become self-aware of your own style, become aware of the situation, and try to find the best. That's all from me. I hope this was useful, helpful, and I wish you all the best in your careers. I'm sure Gina will share my contact in case you would like to chat or get some advice. I'm always available to help people if time permits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gokna, for the very enlightening presentation. Next, we will have the last speakers, Mr. Marvin Suarso, to share about how to be a leader and have effective communication skills for workplace success. Mr. Suarso is a master coach at Engage and Grow and CEO at Engage and Grow Indonesia. Mr. Suarso, also certified coach at Aiding Zero. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Suarso to present. Mr. Suarso, the time and place is yours.
Thank you very much, Gina. And thank you very much, everyone, for allowing me to be a part of your session today and to share a little bit of my experience. So as Gina mentioned, what I do on a day-to-day basis is to work with leaders. I work with entrepreneurs and senior business executives to make sure that they get more fun out of what they do every day and they create more meaningful impact, a positive culture, and sustainable growth in their businesses. So what I will be sharing with you guys today will be a lot of the lessons that I have learned over the last 11 years of working with business leaders. And prior to that, I used to work with elite sports athletes in the world of soccer, as well as junior athletes. So a lot of it is a mixture of everything that I have come across. So I would like to start very quickly to let you know that because I am a coach, even though I have 25 minutes or 20 more minutes, I'm going to treat this like a workshop, which means you guys are going to be working. So it's not just me doing the talking. I'd like you guys to be interactive. So, all right. So get your fingers ready close to the keyboard. If I ask a question, I'm going to ask you to type something on the chat window. Okay. Before I start, I'm just going to point out to my slide here, which says, you know, we lead people and we manage processes. So the key point here is that you got to think of any organization, whether it's a club, it's a team, it's a company. You got to think that this is an organism. It's like a living organism, and it has two most important organs, which is the heart and the brain. Okay. So if I can just quickly draw. So we want to see that in any organization, let's pretend I can draw. That's the first rule, okay? So we've got the heart on one side, and we've got the brain on the other side. Okay, let's pretend this is a brain, and I'm a really good artist. In a team or a business context, in a leadership context, this is going to be around relationships. Okay, this is going to be around communication. It's going to be around behavior. And ultimately, this is all about the emotional side of things. Okay. And then on the brain side of things, this is all about strategy. This is all about the tactics. This is all about the goals. All right, and this is basically all about the logic. Okay, now I'd like you to type on the chat box. In an average week, where do you think most people that are working, most people that are in organizations, spend their time? Is it on the brain or on the heart? Please type on the chat box, brain or heart. Yeah, we'll get a mixture of both. Most people would say that most of their time is on the brain. They're thinking about the goals, they're thinking about the results, they're thinking about the processes, right? They're thinking about new rules. What do I need to do? If my team is not performing, let's come up with an incentive. Let's create new rules. Let's train them. Yeah, so if you're honest, 80% of your time is probably on the brain, okay? But where is the actual root cause of the problem is actually from the heart. Everything that has to do with your team is all about the behavior. It's all about the relationship between your team, between you and your team, between them, between the different teams. Okay, so we want to make sure that we realize in most leadership situations, there's an imbalance we're spending most of our time on the brain, yet the problem is actually on the heart. So I'd like to share with you guys today some practical tips on what you can do to actually make the heart come alive so that the brain can work a lot better. Okay, and this is not going to take more than, about 15 minutes a day that you can actually get this heart going. Okay, so some simple, practical things that you can keep in mind, maybe practice from now in your organizations, and definitely practice later on in the workplace, because it's going to make a huge difference. Okay. So this is a key thing as well. When we're talking about leadership, we got to look at what you can see. What are the observable data when we're talking about leadership? Okay, so I've got a little graph here. On the y-axis is going to be the performance of your team. Okay, and on the x-axis is going to be time. Okay, so this the dot on the left here is when the leader arrives. Okay, this is what usually happens in any given team. When the leader shows up, when the leader is there, performance tends to improve over time. Okay, the fun part is what happens when the leader leaves. What happens if the leader is no longer in the room, on holiday, has been promoted, moved on to a different company? What happens to the trajectory of the team, right? So there's three possible lines this is going to go. It can go down, it can go straight, or it can continue to rise. Okay, so we've got A, B, and C. It's kind of like you guys, right? When the teacher arrives, usually performance goes up. And then they say, okay, you've got a 12-month-long project. It's up to you to run the project, right? So type on the chat box, please. Most likely, where's the performance level after the leader leaves? A, B, or C for you guys, or from what you have observed? Yeah, good. So mostly B's and C's, right? What we want, ideally, we want to be able to get it to this point. Because if we have to always be there, if we have to lead people by sight, leadership by sight, you can't go very far, you can't go very high. Think of someone going on a motorcycle compared to someone going on a fighter jet plane, right? If you're going on a fighter jet plane, you can go very high, you can go very fast, but you can't fly by sight. You have to trust your instruments. You have to trust your team that they have checked the machine, make sure that your plane is in fine working order. Whereas with a motorcycle, you can drive by sight. You're going very slow. So if you want to go high, if you want to go fast, you got to make sure you build your leadership muscle so that performance will always go up whenever you're not there. Okay. All right. So before I continue, I'd like to have a quick check-in with you guys. What has been the most valuable so far, just from the last two sharings that I've given you? Just type down what's one insight that you got around simple things around leadership from my session so far. Told you I was going to make you work. It's 12 o'clock in Jakarta, probably 1 o'clock Singapore time. So in the speaker world, this is called the graveyard shift, right? So I'm here to give you energy. Great. You need proper strategies. You need to integrate the heart and the brain in the workspace. So you can't just focus on one thing. Yeah, they need to work together. There's priorities, there's trade-offs, balancing the heart. Yeah. So leader is about influencing, it's about getting people to want to do something. Okay, great. Excellent. So what is actually leadership? What are the practical actions that you can take as a leader to get the results? Okay, and I'm all about simplifying things. I have a health routine that takes about 3% of my day to make sure that I maintain my ideal body fat levels, I maintain my ideal muscle levels in my body. And we make sure that our clients as well have a leadership rhythm, have a leadership routine that takes maybe about 15 to half an hour per day. If they can maintain that each week, it's going to have a huge result. Okay. So in the rest of my time, I've got about 13 minutes. I'm going to try to share with you what leadership is in a very simple way. Okay, so let's say this is leadership in the middle of this triangle, okay? There's three main components that leaders have to keep an eye on. Number one would be the vision, all right? This is the role of a leader. You got to be the champion of the vision. You got to be able to sell this vision. You got to be able to communicate this vision clearly. You got to make sure that everyone is on board, okay? So what does that look like? So I've got three components here. The first one would be, you got to make sure that you're clear on what is the purpose of your team? What is the purpose of your company? What is the purpose of your organization? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is that important? Why is that exciting? You got to be able to sell that to your team. You got to be able to sell that to your stakeholders. You got to be able to sell that to your customers, right? So you got to be able to think about, why is it, am I doing this? Beyond the money, what is it beyond the money, right? So when we help our clients on the purpose, we tend to start guiding them through three things. Number one would be, what is the impact that you're trying to create? When we talk about impact, we talk about who are we actually serving, right? Who are the clients? How many clients do we want to serve? How many lives do we want to touch with our day-to-day service or products? We talk about our wealth goals, obviously, right? So how much revenue do we need to have? How much profit do we need to have? How much cash do we need to have? Why do we need it? Because it's going to allow us to grow. It's going to allow us to serve more customers. It's going to allow us to serve them better, right? And then ultimately, you're going to talk about clarity on your contribution goals, right? How are we as an organization contributing to society beyond what we offer on a day-to-day basis? So you got to be clear on the purpose. The next thing you need to be able to have clarity on and be able to sell the standards. So standards and boundaries, okay? Every organization needs to have a boundary, which is basically the floor, the lowest level of acceptable behavior. Anything below this is not acceptable. You got to be able to sell that continuously. And then you got to be able to sell the standards. The standards are what we aspire to become. This is the ideal behavior that we as a team want to create. In the old world that I used to live in the soccer world, we used to call it the team's identity. This is how we would play. This is how we behave as a team. Okay. And then finally, you got to be able to get clear on the WIIFM, which is what's in it for me. So you got to be clear on what is the actual vision, what is the actual purpose of every single team member. We got to be able to align their personal goals with the company goals, because ultimately the job of the leader is to assist their team members to be able to achieve their personal goals, and in the process, helping the team achieve the team's goals. Okay, nobody cares how much you know until you show how much you care. So until you really focus on that heart, if you keep harping on the brain, people won't really engage with you. Okay, so number one is on the vision. All right, as I continue, I'd love you to type on the chat box again. What's the clarity that you're getting around the number one job of the leader, which is on the vision? Okay, so as I'm teaching, I'd like you to reinforce the learning by doing that. Go ahead. I'll wait until you type. Yeah, you need to get both the value and the profit. What else? Doesn't have to be an essay, guys. It can be 1 word, 2 words, 3 words. What's the number one thing that you're getting in terms of the role? Yeah, you have to have a clear vision for you, and you got to make it clear for them, right? It has to be crystal clear for your team. Why are we doing this? Why does it matter? Right? Why is it exciting for them? Why do they want to be part of the journey? All right, I'm going to continue. The next one will be your job as the leader is to provide clarity. Okay. The worst thing for a team is confusion. If you have confusion, you're going to be wrapped up in busyness, not in business, right? You're just going to be in a whole whirlwind of busy, busy, busy. Okay. So what type of clarity are we as leaders responsible for? Number one, you got to make sure that you can provide functional clarity. Okay. You got to be able to explain what roles do we need in order to be able to achieve our vision. For each of these roles, what are we expecting them to do? Right? This ties nicely to the context of the previous speaker talking about management, in that we need to also be able to provide some sort of like a job, job creation, which means we need to have certain clear processes. For each function, we need to be clear what are their goals, what are their KPIs, and what projects will they be involved in. And for each of those KPIs, we need to make sure, do we have the processes that they need to follow, that they need to be consistently trained on to be masters at those processes so that they can excel and achieve the results that they want to achieve. Okay, so you got to be clear on the functional clarity. The next thing, our job as leaders is to be able to provide our team members with career clarity, right? What will my job look like in 6 months? What will my prospects look like in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Who could I be like? If you think about the military, the moment they enter into boot camp, they will meet people that they can become. They'll meet people that are ahead of them by 6 months and 1 year. It's like, oh, in 1 year, I could be like those guys. They will meet people that have been ahead of them for 5 years. They will meet generals. They'll meet alumni. So they can relate. They can start setting their vision and having these sort of conversations on an ongoing basis, because people's dreams change. As people go up the mountain, you get more clarity. They can see, oh, I want to go there. I want to go there. Whereas previously, they never thought that, I don't think I could lead. I think I'm just good at this. But as they do more, they learn more, they start saying they're wanting more. Okay, that's part of our role as a leader, is to stretch their brains and stretch their desires so that they can become better people. And then the third one, you want to be able to provide course clarity. Course clarity is making sure that they know whatever they're doing is correct, right? As a leader, we want to be very good at catching people doing the right things. We don't want just to be good at catching people doing the wrong things. Imagine what would happen if every time a baby is trying to learn to walk, then when they fall down, the parents go, just give up already. You're useless. You have no point. And then you scold them every time they fall, right? And when they're kids, we tend to encourage them when they're trying things. As we become adults, and that's the fault of the education system, we get used to that red pen. The red pen becomes important. When the teachers scratch something out, we start associating catching people doing the wrong things as something of importance. Okay, if you want more of something, give it more energy. So in your office, in your teams, catch people doing the right things so you can get them to do more of those things. Okay, give them what we call feed forward, not feedback. Feedback is talking about the past. You can't change the past. Remember last time you were late, that made us really feel sad. It's not good for you to be late. Change it to, hey, for next time, it would be so much better for everyone if you can show up on time, right? This is what we're expecting for you. So give them something in the future that they can then adjust their course. Feed forward is key. Whew. Speed teaching, last bit. I'll finish on time, Gina, don't worry. The last point is that we need to, as leaders, create connection. Yeah, we're all about connection. Remember, the heart is about relationships, is about communication. That's what leadership is. So we got to be good at, like what I said, the first thing around communication, around connection would be communication. Okay, this is the communication between you and your team that you're leading, and the communication between them within the team level, and the communication between cross-function teams. This is key, right? One of the things that is the biggest hurdle in most businesses is communication. And usually the manifestation of that is in meetings. Not enough people learn how to run meetings effectively. Not enough people train on how to prepare for meetings. Not enough people train or learn on how to write emails properly to each other, how to communicate, right? So this is about how often, right? When is an ideal time to communicate, with whom, and how do we communicate, all right? Make sure that this is something you pay clear attention to. The other one would be making sure that we work on the relationships, right? So the relationship between you and your team, between them, and then between other departments. This is key. One of the things that a lot of my successful clients do is that they make a point of each week to at least talk to someone they don't really know, right? Talking to someone from a different function, talking to someone from lower levels over lunch, over coffee, and just talking about them, not talking about work, right? Tell me one thing interesting about you. Tell me one thing nobody else knows about you. And then you share something about yourself, right? We want to avoid calling each other by department names. We want to make sure we call each other by names, and we want to make sure that we put a face to each name and we have stories to each name. So the more we know each other, we start thinking, this guy's all right, this girl's all right. Yeah, whereas normally, finance is annoying, marketing is annoying, sales always wants this. But once we know each other by name, it's like, oh my goodness, it's people. Because ultimately, business, whatever business you're in, B2C, B2B, it's always people to people, right? In your field, my goodness, if you can master this, it will put you in the top 3% of your profession. And then the final point, I told you I'll finish in time. I got 1 minute to go and I'll do it. The final point will be recognition. So like I said before, we got to be good at catching people doing the right things. And then we got to be good at telling them that they're doing the right things, right? So I've got clients that are sending weekly notes to people. So each week they take out 3 postcards. They pick some people that they caught doing the right things. They give them postcards, handwritten postcards. Thank you very much for what you've done. Really appreciate it, right? This is people multiple levels down. I've got clients that on like big public holidays, like on Christmas, allocate, I don't know how many hours, but basically 15-minute conversations over Zoom, over Skype with the family members of their employees. Thank you so much for letting this person work for us. Whatever you're doing at home, it's working because they're really doing well here. If they're being naughty at home, let me know. I'll straighten them out, blah, blah, blah. So you're creating relationships, not just with the team, but with their families. Imagine how engaged the whole family is about them working in the company. When we're giving awards, give it in front of their families, publicize it, put it on Instagram, put it on LinkedIn so everybody knows about it. They will feel like $1 million. All right, guys. And so that's the key thing for me in terms of simple leadership behaviors. If you just pick one thing of these things you do each day, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, it's going to be massive for you guys. All right. So before I go, I would love it if you can share on the chat box your number one takeaway from my talk today while I hand it over back to Gina.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Suarso, for the very insightful presentation. Now, I think because there are a lot of people that would like to question to our speakers, perhaps we can entertain 1 or 2 questions for Ms. Tay or also Mr. Suarso for like, I think 5 minutes. Is that possible?
Yeah, more than happy to.
Okay, so for those of you who would like to ask question, you may raise your hand or you can type on chat. Okay, we have Raihan here from Indonesia. So Raihan, you can speak directly.
Good afternoon, sir and ma'am. I'm Raihan. My question would be, as a leader, have you ever been so overwhelmed with all of your responsibilities that you're holding 24/7 to the point that it demotivates you from doing anything? And if so, how do you overcome that and get back on your feet? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Raihan, for the question. Perhaps Ms. Susan or Mr. Marvin? would like to?
I'm happy to go. That is usually the symptoms of what I call the superhero syndrome, meaning the leader is the smartest person in the room and they're in constant problem-solving mode. Okay, so if you're realizing that you have so many responsibilities and it's overwhelming you, you need to know that you're not delegating enough. You don't have enough systems to support your team so that it becomes delegatable. So what I normally do with that is pinpoint what are the things that we can quickly remove and has the biggest impact in terms of your sanity, and then start systemizing that and working on the delegation. Hope that helps.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Marvin. Perhaps Ms. Susan, do you would like to give inputs?
Okay, quick one. Yes, definitely. I've had a lot of downs, and I've gone to some very serious burnout situation. One advice from a close partner of mine: when 10 things from the sky, don't try to pick all 10 up. Pick one, and always tell the people around you you need a break. Okay, we are not superhero, and we can't be dealing with the situation all the time. And sometimes for some of us, the break is quite long. Yeah, don't be afraid to do that, because when you are not in the right frame of mind, the decisions you make are not going to be right anyway. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Susan. Perhaps we will entertain one more question. We'll give the floor to Adila because she asked on the Zoom chat from the very beginning. So Adila, your time is...
Hi, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
you.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Susan. My question is regarding your decision to collaborate with your partner back in the days. Like, how did you know that you will be able to run a law firm with someone you have never knew before? And what were your considerations and judgment before deciding the decision to work together? Yeah.
Very good question. At the end of the day, I think for me, I really counted on the instinct. It's very funny because I actually was introduced to this partner. His name is Ong, by another guy I wanted to team up. So this guy told me, hey, I really know this person. He's very, very good, but let me talk to him first. I didn't think that he should just talk to him. I decided to check him out myself. And in 2 meetings, I think, or 3, we talked about our own vision, our own values. I felt that we are very aligned. The important things. And the other thing is, that I'm a doer, so I kind of make a decision quickly and then I'll move on. I will have to tell you that when I quit my first firm, I joined a second firm, and I made it clear that I wanted to be a partner. It didn't happen, and within 1 month, I made the decision to quit. So that's the person I am. Sometimes you kind of make the decision and then you decide, okay, this is not working, you move on. That's what happened to me. I was very, very lucky for the 3rd time. I got the right partner and it lasted for a very long time. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Miss.
If I can just add, Adila, in my experience of dealing with partners, the lesson that I've got from one of my mentors is that essence is more important than form. Form is our ability to work together and make money together. Essence is our ability to stay together no matter what. So those things about what are important for them, what are important for us, the core values, the beliefs, those are all the things that you want to uncover early, because going into partnership is kind of like going into a marriage. And the happier you are in the marriage, the longer it lasts, the better it is for everyone.
Totally agree, Marvin.
Okay, thank you so much, Adila, for the question, and Ms. Susan and Mr. Marvin for the answer. Perhaps we'll entertain one more question. This is the last one before we are going to the workshop session. Okay, I think we can have Zinat from Sri Lanka.
Thank you. Thank you for the recognition. My question is now, as the capacity of a leader, if you spot somebody who cannot handle the task you've assigned, how would you communicate it to them without hurting their feelings and without...
Is that clear for Mr. Marvin and Ms. Susan?
I think I can guess. Susan, would you like to go first, or are you okay?
Since you're the coach, why don't you can learn a thing or two from you as well?
All right. One of my favorite frameworks that I personally use and I help my clients use is situational leadership. So there's a great book called Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. And in it, it's basically understanding the development levels on your team member on a particular goal or task. And we need to understand that everyone has different development levels on different goals and different tasks. Okay, and the development level is defined by their commitment, which is their motivation or their confidence, and their competence. Now, the key point about competence is about a consistent track record of success. Unless they can show a consistent track record of success, we would consider this person as still needing a lot of direction from us. Clear goals, clear processes, teach them how to do certain things, and then quite frequent monitoring to make sure they are on the right track. So the important thing is when you're assigning someone a task or you're assigning them a goal is to have an alignment conversation at the beginning and talk about how excited are you about this? How confident are you about this? And do we have a consistent track record of performance on this particular goal, right? Is it high or is it low? And that correlates to what type of support in terms of listening, asking, facilitating from the leader, and direction, which is clear goal setting, teaching them how to do certain things. We don't have to be the one that teaches them. We can provide them with the resources. And also, how often are we going to monitor and how are we going to monitor this person? If you align that with that at the beginning, and then every time you check in, you're going to see, okay, where are we on the development level? Have they moved up? Have they gone back? And then we can easily adjust as we go. So it gives everyone a sense of clarity. And I highly stress that leadership is a partnership. If we try to read their minds, if we try to read their thoughts, it's hard. If we both can be transparent, again, just like in a good marriage, good relationship, if we both can be transparent with each other, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to go, it makes your job a lot easier. Okay, one of the things that I find a constant learning experience is being in a marriage. So to make it easier for me, I ask my wife every 2 months, what's one thing I could do to be a better spouse for you? She tells me what it is, and I do a weekly check-in with her. How am I doing? How am I doing? And it makes it so easy for me because I no longer have to try to read her mind. And, I can't read anyone's mind, let alone women, right? They're very, very different than me. So to have them tell me exactly what they need makes it so much easier in that sense. So the same applies at work.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Marvin. Perhaps, Ms. Susan, do you have anything to add?
Maybe just very short. Thank you, Marvin. I always learn so much when I'm listening to you. I am quite impatient and I have a bad temper, so I have to watch myself all the time. Just a few simple rules I tell myself when I'm giving feedback. Number one, try to do it one-to-one, not in front of a lot of people. Sometimes I forget, okay? Number two, it's not just your words, it's your tone. I've been told that many thousand times. I can say, oh, you are good, or I can say, oh, yeah, sure, you are good. So be careful of your tone and your body language. And it's always good to ask the other party, perhaps you can tell me what is holding you back, or perhaps tell me what is the problem you're facing. So when you do that, it's not just you telling her, hey, you know your job, you really suck at this. What happened? It's more like, can we help you get there? And it always is much better